Hi there, it's Brandon. You're watching Jozi to Germany again. So today, the title is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to talk about how you can apply for your visa to Germany. I just want to put a disclaimer out there that this video may not necessarily be all-inclusive of absolutely everything you need to know about applying for a visa, but I think I've covered all of the basics and all of the most important things, and it's really up to you, the viewer, to do your own research and make sure that you have everything in order, because I promise you everything you need to know can be found on the internet or from a more qualified person. Anyway, let's get started. So we'll start with a few of the most basics. Obviously, when you are applying for a visa to any country in the world, it really helps you to not have a history of alcoholism, drugs, violence, or just general brushes with the law. In other words, don't be a criminal, stay in school, kid. That aside, it does help you to be prepared very, very far in advance before you go into the German embassy to apply for said visa. There is a list of things that you should probably have with you that will make your life one heck of a lot easier when you get there for your interview. Keeping in mind that if you have landed the opportunity for an interview, unless you are a hardened criminal or drug addict, chances are you will probably get the visa. If your visa is declined, however, I'm not sure how long it is, but I don't think you're allowed to apply for another one for a certain amount of time. So, what kind of things do you need when you're applying for this visa? Number one, you need a valid passport. That much is obvious. Aside from that, what else do you need? You need your au pairing contract. Now the thing is, right, that not all au pairs find their host families the same way that I did, which was through a website, and I'll get to that in another video. However, most of the time, in fact, if not all of the time, your host family should provide you with a written contract that stipulates exactly what they expect of you and exactly what you are expected to do as an au pair while you are in said country, in this case Germany. It's a really good idea, not just for your au pair contract, but for all of the written and printed things that you have to bring at least 2 copies. Next thing, your host family needs to book you at least a very basic medical or health insurance for the duration of your stay that you are in this country. And you need to have that printed out, again, at least 2 copies, and you need to have proof of that insurance for the duration of your stay printed out in at least 2 copies and ready to hand in your folder. Aside from that, you need 2 biometric photos, which are basically photos in the style of your ID photo. That aside, you need to fill out the application for a residence permit, which you can find on the website of the German embassy. You need at least 2 of these things to be printed, filled out by yourself. So in other words, you can't just photocopy the one that you filled out and give it to them like that. You have to fill out both of them by hand. You also need, I forgot the name of this one, but I think you find all the documentation you need on aupairworld.com. You can find all the documentation you need there, but this other document, I forgot what it's called, but it's basically a signed declaration from you, the future au pair, that you do not have a criminal record, that you haven't lied on any of your application things, and that you don't intend to commit any crimes while you are in Germany, and you'll be on your best behavior. So again, you need 2 copies of that. If I do perchance end up finding the name of this document, I will add a caption into the video and put it in right over here. Wait, my hands are not in the video, right over here. So let's just really hope that I found it. Anyway, so far we've had 2 copies of your au pair contract that you need, signed by your host family and by yourself. So the way that my host family did this was that they printed the contract, filled out everything they needed to fill out with their signature, scanned it back into the computer, emailed it to me, then I had to print it out, fill out everything from my side. So like I said, 2 copies of everything except for obviously your passport. So we've got au pair contract times 2, biometric photos times 2, declaration that you're not a freaking criminal times 2, passport that is valid times 1, application for a residence permit times 2, if I didn't already say that. Now, this next part is actually quite important, even though it's not so important, you know. You need to have valid proof that you have at least a level A1 in German. What is A1? Well, in most of Europe and some parts of Asia actually, they use a rating system using letters and numbers to determine one's fluency or ability in a given language. So the way it works is that A1 is your very, very, very first steps in a language, normally a complete beginner, and then it goes all the way up to level C2, right? So it goes A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Most people who speak a language like as a native language, as a first language, and who have grown up with a good vocabulary, they will normally be about C1 in their native language, and the only way to get to C2 is to have studied that language extensively at university, right? In other words, you are considered to have mastered the language. So really, they're not asking much. You need some form or some form of proof that you are at least level A1 in German, which is actually quite reasonable considering that you'd like to have an extended stay in the country. This is just a little disclaimer here. The way that I provided my proof maybe was not the best way, because I taught myself German using an app called Duolingo. There's my Duolingo app. As you can see, my fluency has kind of slid according to this app because I haven't practiced German on it in a while. I'm currently learning Italian. However, I assure you my German level hasn't slipped. The point about this is the fact that I taught myself German, which I would say is commendable. The whole problem is that because I did not take lessons or an official course from any reputable sources, such as the preferred one, which is the Goethe Institute, I will put a link to their website in the description. If you do not have a certificate from a place like that, or they even list homework as an example or some proof that you can speak, then it's very, very difficult to provide actual proof that you speak any of the language. And the problem is that you can't just waltz in there and show them a screenshot of your Duolingo course. What I did was I ended up sending a message to a professor of German at one of the universities that is closest to me, and she very kindly agreed to have an informal assessment with me one afternoon, where we sat down and had a conversation, and she asked me certain questions designed to assess my level, and then she herself, as the professor of that university, typed out a letter for me with the university's logo on it, stating that I was actually above the A1 level. I'm not going to give the name or details about this professor because she doesn't normally do this, and I think she would like her privacy protected. So something that is also quite important and that I completely forgot to mention is that you need to have a signed letter of invitation to your country from your host family. Again, preferably with 2 copies. If I have forgotten anything, I will type it out in the description, but I think that covers basically everything that you need before you go for your interview I think that will cover you for everything you need going into your interview at der Deutsche Botschaft, the German embassy. Now we get into the actual embassy visit. Dun 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 dun. So for me, visiting the German embassy in Sandton, South Africa was actually the most nerve-wracking part of this whole process for me. And trust me, I spent months stressing about how I would get proof of my German level. The reason why is because the Germans just have this reputation for punctuality and for being so quick and, I want to say, almost ruthless when it comes to official documents and planning like this. So I made sure that I got there on time, not too early, not too late. I think maybe 10 minutes beforehand is a good sort of time to be there. Make sure you dress nicely, you look presentable. Whatever you do, do not be late. Do not be late. That is the problem with being late anywhere, is that it's just disrespectful of people's time, and it indicates to them that you have more important things on your mind, which is really not a great indication for you and your character when you're applying to have an extended stay in another country. They want people of good moral fiber and good caliber, which makes a lot of sense. So, like I said, up to about 10 minutes beforehand is a good start, right? Make sure when you get there that you are well dressed, well organized. Again, don't show up in a tuxedo, but make sure that, smart casual, look good. If you want to wear a button-up shirt, go ahead and wear your button-up shirt. Make sure you have all your documentation with you, okay? In other words, double copies of all the documents that are listed and any others you might need as well. Make sure as well that you know exactly what you have and where it is, so that you're not fumbling to check for it during your interview. When it comes to the actual interview, it's not really an interview as such. It's more just a handing over of papers along with the required processing fee that you have to pay, which on any given day is a standard of 60 euros. Now, You have to pay this in rands, obviously, if you're from South Africa, or you have to pay it in your converted currency, which means that the converted amount will fluctuate day by day depending on where you live and how much you actually need to pay. And that is the standard processing fee, by the way, 60 euros. At least in my appointment, once we were called in, the lady asked us to sit down. I sat there, my mother sat next to me, and the rest of my family, who were waiting anxiously, waited outside. They normally talk to you through this pane of bulletproof glass, I suppose, so that angry people who are denied their visa don't attack or whatever. I don't know, because it's very official when you're dealing with people's documents and papers and things like that. You have to remember that if they allow this application to go through, all of your papers and all of your documents are shipped all the way to Germany, where they are then either approved or denied. But honestly, if they are going to the effort of shipping it for you, you'll probably get approved. And then shipping it all the way back. So when they're dealing with documents like that, they need to be protected. Bulletproof glass, you slide everything in through a little sliding drawer thing in the order and only in the order that the interviewer, lady or man, asks you for. So what happened with us was that we handed over all of my documents, and then again, this could all be avoided if I had known sooner about the requirement of the minimum A1 German, because I had printed out my letter from the professor as proof, because again, I'm self-taught in German, and I was not able to apply for a Goethe Institute 6 to 8 week test in time. Also, those tests are freakishly expensive, so shame on you, Goethe Institute. So for this next part, this is the only part you could really consider an actual interview in this whole appointment, is that if the German embassy or if your interviewer feels in any way or suspects in any way that your proof of German level is not up to scratch, in other words, if it's not a Goethe Institute certificate, then they probably still will not deny your visa, but they reserve every right to spot test you. So that's what happened to me, is I was spot tested because obviously this lady does not receive letters from professors of German every single day instead of a Goethe Institute certificate, and when you go to a German embassy, you better have your stuff in order. So what kind of questions and what kind of things did I have to do for this interview? This is where I would really advise that your spoken German and your listening German is really up to scratch beforehand, because I did not receive any form of written test or anything like that so that she could verify my German level. And make sure your formal spoken German is up to scratch, because at that stage I was very, very capable in informal German, using du and things like that. With formal speaking, however, I was completely behind, and the problem was that because I had taught myself everything I knew about German, I was still not able to answer some of the most basic things that this lady asked me, which I felt really terrible for afterwards and very embarrassed. I remember one of the questions this lady asked me was, as an au pair, if your children fall sick or something happens, what will you do? And again, this was all in German, so it took me a couple of minutes to figure out what the word Notfall meant, which means emergency. And eventually I just said that I would take them to the hospital in broken German, because at that point my embarrassment was causing me to have a bit of a breakdown. Some of the other questions that this lady asked me, again, don't judge me. When you teach yourself German, you tend to brush over the things you don't need currently. So to end off this whole rant, the whole point that I'm trying to get across is that because I had taught myself German, I had skipped over a few of the essentials of basic first level German that I actually needed. So when this lady asked me if I could tell her my phone number in German, I kind of hesitated, and she saw that. Further again, when she asked me could I spell my name in German, I thought to myself, hey, I can talk to you about why I'm a feminist and a male, but I can't spell my name. What the heck is up with that? It was just really ridiculous, and it was a huge eye-opener for me in that I realized that I had missed out on a lot of things in my German study. However, thankfully, all this lady did was look at me and say, I don't think the professor was correct about your level of A2, but you definitely are good with your A1. So my application went through. Like I said, after the 60 euro handling fee, we were told that the process would take between 2 to 3 months before I received some kind of communication from the German embassy about the status of my visa. But like I said, at that point, if it's gone through to be approved in Germany, it probably will be approved in the end. At the end of the day, it ended up taking 2.5 weeks instead of 2 to 3 months, which was absolutely excellent, and I have to applaud the German Botschaft embassy for their efficiency. So yeah, that is my story of how I got my visa. Any other questions? Let me know in the comments below. Hallo, ihr sollt nicht vergessen, dieses Video zu like, kommentieren und abonnieren. Danke!